Dan Kruger, Michael Taylor, and Henry Degouw to talk about the Macau Grand Prix, its history, its challenges, and what we can expect this coming November the 19th to the 22nd at the Macau Grand Prix. Henry can probably fill us in a little bit on some of the riders to watch, in addition to Dan Kruger, who will be representing Canada. But this past weekend, lots going on in the world of motorcycle road racing, and Stuart Nodell, my co-host and producer, and I are going to walk you through some of the latest news and have a bit of a discussion. Dan, Michael, and Henry, sit back and enjoy, and we'll get to you in just a few minutes. So, Stuart, let's start off with the opening round of the CSBK series at Calabogie this coming Saturday. It's a one-day event, no spectators. Colin Fraser has been able to put this together with Sandy Noche of Pro 6, who's been doing a bunch of track days up there over the last week. The previous weekend, the riders were there getting in some laps. I know Jordan Zoke was there, Ben Young and others. But Stuart, why don't you run us through what we go back to CSBK there for a minute, then we'll get to Shannonville. So one-day event, the four classes that will be running are Superbike, Pro Sport Bike, as well as Amateur Superbike and Lightweight Sport Bike. So Amateur Lightweight Sport Bike. So those are the four classes. Riders needed to register as of this past Saturday. Registration is being handled by Pro 6. I'm not sure exactly how large the entry will be in each class. We'll, I guess, find out more a little bit later on this week. But Stuart, they're going to be running on the long track there, 20-turn layout, challenging racetrack. And of course, the concern that I'm sure a lot of riders will have will be, are the corners protected enough with a combination of air fencing, possibly straw bales, because for any rider who's been to Calabogie, there's not a lot of runoff room in some of those critical corners. So I was waiting for your response to that, Stuart. I'm not sure if you've done any track days there or not.
Oh, you know what, Pat? I never took the opportunity to go to Calabogie. By the time I was rounding up my racing days, the series never raced there, and I'd never done any track days there. So unfortunately, I don't have any track knowledge to speak of from experience.
Right. So this past weekend, they opened up at Shannonville Motorsport Park with the new team running the opening round, racing on both Saturday and Sunday. In Superbike, Eli DeCash, who I assume will be at Calabogie this weekend, won both Superbike races on Saturday and Sunday. And for those of you in Southern Ontario, you know we had some very nasty storms come through in the afternoon. The Super Series actually moved up and condensed their Sunday program, so they were able to get it wrapped up by about 3 o'clock in the afternoon and avoid having to race in some of that nasty, severe thunderstorm weather. So tip of the announcer's cap to the new team at the Super Series. There was we can go back, Stuart, I just want to finish up my thoughts on Shannonville. There was some controversy on Saturday in the Pro Sport Bike race, where Elliot Vieira, who brought out a red flag when he crashed, when he was holding about a 17-second advantage, the official results gave the win to Elliot Vieira, although he had brought out the red flag. That made Louis Rafa, who was in second at the time, end up officially in second. Rafa apparently was very, very upset that Elliot Vieira was not removed from the results, and so consequently I think he packed up and left. Vieira damaged the bike. He was having some issues with arm pump, and they left Shannonville on Saturday after the crash. He had finished second in the open race, the open superbike race. So he has been on the gas, one of maybe the riders with a shot at the National Pro 600 Sport Bike Championship. He won both of those classes at Soar during rounds 1 and 2. So on Sunday, the other story there was the Leclerc brothers, Jake winning pro sport bike, and in amateur sport bike, it was Ben Leclerc who had also won on Saturday. So a good weekend for the Leclerc brothers that we had on the show here about 3 weeks ago. This coming weekend, in addition to the race on Saturday, CSBK at Calabogie, for most of the Ontario racers, it'll be round 3 of the Soar Series on the road course at Grand Bend Motorplex. They'll be running their usual complement of classes. Ken McAdam and his crew have done a great job through the first couple of rounds. And we understand that a limited number, 100 spectators, will be permitted. And if you're interested in catching the racing this weekend at Grand Bend, round 3 of the Soar Championship, you must contact Grand Bend and they will let you know how you get a ticket to go there either Saturday or Sunday or both days on the weekend. And so MotoGP, Stuart will let you handle that. Marc Marquez, not how he wanted to start the season in defense of his MotoGP World Championship.
Yeah, that's true, Pat. He looked like he was just flying through the pack, getting to the front, and had a big get-off at Jerez, and it ended up being that he did break his arm, and he broke the upper part of his arm, so it's quite a large bone, and apparently as of tomorrow they're going to be operating on him. So it looks like he'll be missing out on the second Jerez coming up this weekend, because they're of course racing back-to-back as well, with everybody being in a condensed schedule situation. So you know, hopefully he gets back soon, because you know he'll be a title contender. Obviously he's the favorite, but Fabio Quartararo was able to get his first win, and he did so in dominating fashion.
And there you see the rest of the podium and all of the major series around the world, and we'll get into that shortly with Dan Kruger, who is in touch not just with what's happening at the MotoGP level, but a lot of the other major national championships around the world. Of course, lots of events canceled in April and May and June, including the Isle of Man TT and some other major events. And we're just really getting started in terms of a 2020 motorcycle road racing season. Our guests tonight, and we'll see them in a moment, Michael Taylor, who raced as part of the North American team at the Macau Grand Prix back in 1993. Henry Degouw, I still say he's from Waxahachie, Florida, but he's living out in the country in Florida. And the picture there you see, that's Henry leading our own Art Robbins. And again, no real further update on Art. The last time we checked in with Charlie Black, he was still recovering in hospital, and we'll try to get a more detailed update for next Monday night on Track Announcer's Notebook. And of course, Dan Kruger, who's been carrying the Canadian flag internationally for many years now in the Chinese Superbike Championship, but also at the Macau Grand Prix. He is going to be representing Canada in November. So Henry, Michael, and Dan, welcome to Track Announcer's Notebook. Henry, I know you have been a regular attendee to the shows. Michael and Dan, you were on earlier in the show history. What's been going on, first of all, Michael, in your life since your last appearance on Track Announcer's Notebook? What are you seeing? What are you hearing? And any plans to get on a motorcycle anytime soon? I guess the idea to do some endurance races with Pat Barnes is officially shelved.
Yeah, Pat, I expressed some interest in it over a couple of gin and tonics with Pat at a local pub, and he kind of carried it through. And Pat is a man of means. He was always able to get me whatever I needed on our race team when we needed it. And as soon as I suggested I had an interest in jumping on an endurance bike, he made sure there were about 3 different bikes available and all kinds of opportunities. I wasn't that interested in Grand Bend as a racetrack, to be honest with you, and that was where all the events were going to be. I thought maybe a most sport event or something like that might have been ideal, but yeah, I haven't followed through with it. I think Pat may be doing something himself this weekend. I'll have to give him a call and find out if he's at the Grand Bend event.
Pat is actually one of our attendees listening in, so maybe we'll get him on right at the end. I know there was some rumor he was going to try to do the endurance with perhaps Tony Sharpless, maybe Kathleen Colbert. Dan Kruger, I assume you are in the Atlanta area. How have you been? I guess we talked to you a couple of months ago, right at the start of May. And how have things been for you? What's changed in the last couple of months with your racing program? Where are you going to race and when?
Yeah, I mean, thanks for having me on. It just changes every day with the news. Things keep getting pushed out, canceled, or combined with other events that might not make sense for sponsors or whatever. But my biggest thing is I've kind of made my racing career international, whereas a lot of guys have both. I mean, they either have a domestic program or someone like Michael was domestic, but also international. So you always had something to fall back on. Because I'm not doing anything locally, it made sense while it was working, but now that there's no travel, it's kind of backfired. So, you know, I don't feel like really hopping on a plane to go to Europe just to do a test. It just doesn't make sense at my stage in my career. Like, I'm not a factory A rider or something like this, so it wouldn't make any sense. So I built a track bike locally in Georgia, and I'm gonna go down and ride on the 2nd of August for a day in West Palm, and then I'm gonna ride Road Atlanta the week later for a couple of days, and just to get on a bike. And I've been training tons. I mean, I've never felt better in terms of like my fitness level, my injuries, everything feels fantastic. It's been great for that. It's been amazing for my family. See my family so much. It's been great not traveling, but definitely ready to ride a motorbike. And so, yeah, I mean, I'll be testing a little bit. If Daytona runs in October, I'm probably going to run there just to get some track time. And then, you know, Macau's a really, really big deal for us. The race is obviously a lot of fun, but it's a bigger deal for us just because we do so much with the charity, with the MGM and with autistic kids, and we have a whole big program that goes on for Macau. So Macau is a big deal for me, not just for motorbike racing.
All the stuff off the track. We're going to get into some of that a little bit later on in the work you've been doing there for a number of years with Special Olympics, where those kids actually design the graphics on the bikes that you're going to ride. Let's bring in Henry Degouw. Henry, you have got a long history with the Macau Grand Prix event going back to the early 80s when you raced there, and not sure how you got the job to be the North American team manager and recruit top American and Canadian riders, including Michael Taylor in 1993. But give us the quick abbreviated version of how all of that came about.
Well, hopefully you can hear me now. I had a little operator.
All good, Henry. All good.
It is good. Okay. It was operator error, my fault, because you guys gave me really good instructions and I was on before, so no excuses there. But no, I raced it, you know, 83 through 86, 84 through 86. And then that was it. I retired. That was my last race. And Flying Tigers, which had sponsored me to get over there all those years, they asked me to bring an American team over, a North American team. Actually, through the years, we brought a couple of South Americans too. But so I took the job. I always enjoyed going over there, as Michael knows, and Dan. of course, has been. How many years? I'm curious. We'll get to this. How many years Dan has been going over there? I wasn't aware of that. I haven't been keeping a real close eye on it since in the last few years. So that's my excuse there. But of course, with Michael, he was the second Canadian rider that we brought over. Art Robbins was the first, and he was before his accident. He was right up there running with a 500 GP bikes, so he was representing well.
Yeah, it was exciting times.
Yeah.
And Henry, Art was the first rider, as you said, in 1987. It took you almost 6 years to select another Canadian. And how did you come up with Michael Taylor in 1993 to be part of the North American team?
Well, his results in Canada stood out. He was obviously a talented rider. And so he was the first one after Art. I'm sure there were others we could have brought, but it just turned out that way. And then after that, it was several years later, we brought others over. I know I sent you a list of.
Yeah, and just so real quickly, Kevin Lacombe and Frank Trombino in 2002. Feel free to share any special stories of any of the years with any of these riders. And then Steve Crevier in 2005, and then I guess the last Canadian, 2010, was Chris Paris.
Right. Going back to Art, he was he was spectacular. We saw him, when I was racing, we saw him show up at Loudon, and he had a style that was different from any that we'd seen, especially on a superbike running with the F1. So he stood out. And Michael, as I say, was a top runner. And Kevin Lacombe, I believe he was champion that year or the year before. And I remember his picture all over town. They had him on billboards and everything. He did okay. Frank Trombino, he was a real trip. I just remember that.
What about Crevier? There's got to be a Crevier story or two.
I was a little worried about Crevier, but he took it easy. It's a holiday race. I'm sure Dan knows that. And so he was safe. And Chris Paris was exceptionally fast around there. He was on it. I remember up to the point then he was one of the fastest, if not the fastest, I'd brought over there in lap time. That had qualified highest up. So that's pretty much it. There were 7 or 6 Canadian riders that we brought through the years, but we've had all Josh Hayes and a lot of top AMA guys that run. Of course, Kevin Schwantz won it in 1988, and Michael, I haven't actually seen him since that.
Wow.
I saw him in the hospital the last time I saw him, and we spoke after that, and I'm glad he turned right around and became he was Canadian Superbike champion. I could not believe it because he was
like a year later or something. This is the first time I've seen you, Henry, and I got to take this opportunity to thank you because you guys, everybody took good care of me. There was a lot wrong with me back then. I broke myself up pretty good. And the medical help and organizationally, everybody got me home. I got looked after here, and the fact that I can do everything that I do still today is a credit to all of your efforts and everybody involved with the organization of the Canadian and American Riders going. So thank you,
Michael. Take us back to 1993. And the conversation with Henry to become part of the North American team. And what was the experience like there and the racetrack and your whole approach? Obviously, it didn't end well with a big crash that put you in hospital. But take us through that experience at the Macau Grand Prix in November of 1993. What sticks out in your mind?
It was an interesting fall, Pat, because I got phone calls from Yoshimura Suzuki, from Vance and Hines and from Muzzies about the following year. And then I got a phone call from Henry as well. And I'd put a lot of effort myself into being recognized in the U.S. I wanted to get onto a U.S. team. A couple of Canadians had done it before me and had done really well. And that was the next step. That was the next logical step for me in my career, was to get on the U.S. team. And I saw the Macau race as an opportunity just to keep that ball rolling, because the ball was rolling pretty good already. I'd done a lot of races in the U.S. that season, and that's probably how my name first came up into Henry's attention. And when Henry invited me there, and we started talking a little bit of money too, because I'd spent a lot of money of the race winnings I made in Canada to compete in the U.S. So it was like, okay, well, you just have to ride around and do, ride 70%, and you'll make more money than you made at any Canadian race or U.S. race throughout the whole year. And you get to go to China, and Kuala Lumpur was on the schedule that year as well. It would have been the second race I did. So I was pretty excited to go, and I brought my mechanic with me. It was kind of a gift to Jeff Bluer, who was working with me at the time, to credit for all the effort he'd done, and was fairly underpaid. I thought, oh, this is a great adventure for both of us. And I got there, and it blew my socks off. It's an interesting place. It's a former Portuguese colony where there's a lot of old, like, Portuguese, Spanish style architecture mixed in with the tiny skinny, really tall skyscrapers. And I remember architecturally, because I'm a builder, but it was just a very, very interesting city. And I spent as much time as I could getting familiar with it. We had a scooter, we rented bicycles from somebody, and Jeff and I rode around a lot. And we met a local guy in Macau who had a Kawasaki, and we were one of the few teams racing Kawasaki's there at the time. Interestingly, the guy that hit me was on a Kawasaki, but this guy had a GPZ 550, and we got talking to him, and he offered it. I didn't even ask. He offered, do you want to ride my bike around the track? Because it's still a public road today and tomorrow, and then it's a racetrack, and by the time you get on it. So it was invaluable experience, because I rode his GPZ 550 on fairly empty roads on the racetrack to learn the place, and it made a big difference. I wouldn't have gone nearly as fast if I hadn't had that opportunity. And I was thinking about this last night when I knew I was going to be on here, and I just finished watching the Formula One race with Colin Fraser over the weekend, and corner one was such a big deal. I think I passed. I don't know how well I qualified. Henry or Pat, you maybe have a better idea, but I think I was probably somewhere around 10th or 12th. But I think I went into corner one in like 4th place, because I knew that we weren't going nearly as fast off the start than on a regular lap. So I just waited till everybody else braked, and then, okay, now I'll start for break. And I made it through the corner and way high up. And then all of a sudden that kind of set the stage where now I'm racing for 4th or 3rd instead of 10th or 12th, and that I stuck to it. I just kept the lap times up and pushed as hard as I could.
And what about the accident? Where on the racetrack that occurred?
It's a funny story, but Dan will remember this corner very well. He's been around it lots of times. But the Malcoa hairpin is so tight, and I had my bike geared so tall. We had a kit gearbox in the ZX7 that I was riding, and whatever, first and second were therefore so tall, because we were doing 180 miles an hour down the straightaway, that I think even in first gear, I had to go really wide around the hairpin in order to keep the revs up enough that I didn't bog it. And I was exiting it so wide that I kept hitting the guardrail with my left shin. And of course, everybody knows your left shin is the muscle that pulls your foot up to downshift. So I kept hitting it more and more. And what happened, I found out from the doctors that I basically went to sleep. So when I was at the end of the straightaway where you got to downshift, I don't remember, Dan probably knows better. I think you downshift all the way to first for the first right-hander. And at that time, Henry may remember, but they used mattresses to line the track on the outside, because we didn't have air fencing and stuff like that yet. And I couldn't downshift enough times, because my left shin was dead from hitting the Malcoa hairpin guardrail. and I went through that Lisboa corner. That's the one, the right-hander Lisboa. I went through the Lisboa in like third instead of first because I couldn't downshift enough times, and I exited too wide, and I caught the mattress with with my handlebar, and it sent me into a high side, and got hit from behind by one of the other riders in fourth or fifth or whatever he was.
Okay. Dan Kruger, obviously you're familiar with the corner where Michael's Macau Grand Prix ended many laps too early. For somebody who's been to a lot of different racetracks in his career, and what I've seen and looking at the video of your crash last year at Macau, this is a very unforgiving racetrack where disaster could happen anywhere, anytime. What percentage do you have to ride this racetrack in order to finish? And even that doesn't guarantee that you're not going to have some kind of an issue.
Yeah, it's
Stand
changed
there,
a lot since
yeah.
Yeah, so it's changed a lot over the years. Real road racing used to be, you know, you ride 95%, keep 5% for backup. But now that the British Superbike guys are all doing crossing over to road racing, it's the same as the circuit race now. Everyone, if you want to finish top 5, you're riding like 105%. You're just hanging it out there. That's not me. I'm still at 95, and but 95 is still frightening at Macau when something goes wrong. And the things that go wrong at Macau, a lot of times don't have to do with you making a rider error. In fact, it's less common there because you're so focused. The odd time it can be a bike problem. Thank goodness I've never had that. But you know, I lost my teammate in 2017. He had a bike malfunction, and you know, he lost his life at Macau. But I would say, you know, this past year there was a real big crash at when we started the race, and that delayed the race a couple of hours. And the motorbikes are exciting, but they're not the main attraction. It's the Formula cars and all the cars. So the schedule plays against us. So they kept pushing it out, the restart. And once they cleaned up the circuit, we went out, and the sun was going down. So it felt like we were at the TT, actually. When you ride, you know, the TT you ride at night, sunset. And so you're always like staring into the sun. Well, that's what Macau was like this year. And it was the first year that they went to all electronic flags. So it was really, you know, if we're talking about my crash, when I was going down into Fisherman's, it's fast. It's probably, you're going down, you're just coming down the mountain. You're probably in third gear, but fast. But it's a blind right corner. And the electronic signals were on the upper left side. So you couldn't see the flashing yellows because the sun was directly in our eyes. And the rider in front of me hadn't had his hand up. So I went in at like full speed, and sure enough, there was already 6 or 7 guys down. It was actually my teammate that caused the crash. He lost the front end into the barrier, and it's a blind corner, but it's also very narrow there. So there's nowhere to go when that happens. So that's kind of what went down there. But yeah, it's very unforgiving. I mean, you know, there's no braking markers. You need to go there a few years and get experience and be with a good team that knows how to set up your bike right, because there's not a lot of track time. And you also have to let it come to you, because the first few days it's very slippery, because like Michael said, it's still a road and it becomes a road again. You know, it's slippery, and so the times drop every session for everybody, so you can't really chase a time. And yeah, I love it though. I enjoy it probably more than I enjoy the road racing in Ireland. Macau is just a nice fit for what I like.
how difficult is it on that track with all of the car classes, Formula 3, touring cars, etc., running? Does that, make the track better because there's a lot more rubber down, or
Yeah.
dealing with other issues?
Well, yeah, you're dealing with some dust, when they're cleaning up oil and stuff, but that's a little bit more psychological. They do a really good job over there. When Mike Tremblay was running it, they ran it quite professionally, and I wasn't racing it then. Mike Taylor would have been there at that time, but they haven't changed the structure. They take it very seriously, even though it's more of a show. It's not part of a championship. They take it pretty seriously. There's a lot of high-level people there. It's on TV, so they don't want to mess up for their own sake and for pride. But the cars help more than anything. Getting the rubber down is really important. It's just sometimes there's delays because when the cars pile up, it could take an hour to clean it up.
Okay. Henry, you've listened to Michael and Dan about their Macau Grand Prix experience. What was it like for you first as a racer in the mid-'80s, and then after that as somebody who went over there every year as team manager for the group of North American riders?
Well, for me, the first thing was I'd never run a real road course before, and this was a truly road course. So it was pretty scary, and we ran two 60-mile legs, one on Saturday, one on Sunday, and I think Michael had the same, I believe 260, then it went to 160. The thing was, the bikes were fast then, and the course isn't really changed. It's basically the same track. At Marlboro, they've opened it up a little bit, and they did that in the 80s. So and they smoothed it out, so it's even faster. So the real problem is these motorcycles are so fast. It's really scary. I mean, now, and you're running between guardrail and wall, and it bothered me. I always tried to take the safest team I could to compete there and have a good time and tell them, hey, and I know Michael will remember this, we're going to Thailand after all of this. And he's right. We went to Jakarta. It was Indonesia after that, and he was supposed to go to that one, but we had to leave him in the intensive care in Macau. But he was talking, so that was a good thing. But he was really hurt bad. So with Dan running this, I mean, now is every year the bikes get faster, and it's very, very dangerous. I don't know how much longer they can keep doing that, because you can only go so fast.
It won't be much longer. It won't be much longer.
Yeah, you know what I'm talking about. You're out there, and Michael was going with those 500 GP bikes. He was.
Yeah.
I remember there was a camera on Steve Hislop's bike in practice and qualifying, and Michael was running right up there with him with a 750 super bike.
Yeah, I was thinking about this a lot. The advantage you have there is because it's so blind. The torque of our bikes. I remember running with those bikes. They were, Sean Emmett was there too,
Yeah.
in Hislop. And the things were incredibly fast on the top end, but you could make a lot of ground on those guys in some of the slower speed corners. It would take them a little while to get up to speed. And because the traction wasn't great, because it was a road course, they were a little hesitant. They were all about horsepower and not torque. And I grew to love torque. I raced a lot of, 1000s after that, 750 and the Harley Davidson 1100 and stuff. I grew to love torque way more than horsepower. And I took advantage of the strengths that that bike did have, and I wasn't scared of them. There's places where you couldn't stay with them, but you don't focus on that. You focus on the stuff you can do, and yeah, it was pretty exciting.
Yeah, that was the first time I heard exactly what happened, what caused that accident, because the last time we talked there, it was pretty foggy to you even then, because you'd just been through surgery and everything. But I had not heard that, where you were banging your your shin.
Left shin. And
At
to this,
Delco. Yeah.
to this day, that left shin, I can't I couldn't downshift for years after that very well. So that's probably why I got into torque bikes, because I didn't have to shift them as often. But yeah, I was kept bouncing off that guardrail, and you'd hear the bikes coming behind, and I didn't want to let the bike bog, you know. And I mean, if we had more time, perhaps we could have changed gear ratios or something like that. But it's interesting. We were talking a little bit earlier, but that race, it reminds me of like a performance you'd see on stage or something, where, okay, here's your 10 minutes. Like if you're a comedian or whatever you are, here's your 10 minutes. It's all about that 10 minutes. You got to wait. You're waiting all day for the cars to finish or whatever else it is. But you're 10 minutes on track, or 15 minutes or whatever it is. You got to pay so much attention and fill your brain up with whatever you can from the track to stay safe and to be competitive too. And it's pretty intense, but it's like show time and go time, you know?
You'll be happy to know they got rid of the mattresses.
Yeah.
Yeah,
So,
but they didn't replace it with anything. It's only guardrail now.
Oh, great.
It's only guardrail. But I'll tell you what's nice about it now is practice. FP1 is at like 6:30 in the morning. And
That's nice.
yeah, because it's so hot there.
Oh yeah.
But it's kind of cool because the lights are still on the casinos. Like it's been built up a lot since you've been there. There's loads and loads. It looks like Las Vegas.
Yeah.
And so it's still dusk. The sun's coming up and you're going out, you know, like around Mandarin at like flat out and whatever, like 180 mile an hour. And it's just kind of a surreal time to be on a motorbike. It's pretty cool if you like take a second and actually enjoy it. And for the first 3 times I went there, you know, I was just happy to be done. Like I enjoyed being there, but I was more happy when it was over and I could talk about it. This past year, I enjoyed every minute on the motorbike. I wanted more. And I'd never felt like that before. And I guess because the fear a little bit and just the consequences always in the back of my head. But I finally knew the track inside out. I just had a lot of fun. And I realized how much fun it could be when, you know, probably how you felt when you were on your A game in a race. Like just wished it went on for another 10 laps.
Yeah. It's funny that you're talking about 95% or 105 and whatever you give, but there's, like you say, the British Superbike guys they're going now, and it's really balls to the wall racing.
Wow.
And I think I don't think I ever rode a motorcycle, a race motorcycle, even in practice sessions or whatever. You know, you go. We were talking about Calabogie a little bit earlier, the race there. You know, I've done a couple of track days with Pro 6 on bikes that they'd set me up with at Calabogie, and you don't even pay attention. You know, on the warm up lap, maybe you'll look at, okay, there's a spot to be careful of, but the reality is once you get into it, a good fast lap time, all you think is, okay, well, it's going to hurt if I crash here, but not I'm going to make any compensation for it. I'm not going to go any slower here. I just know it's going to hurt here if I crash. So, and the whole racetrack in Macau is kind of like that. Like that, everywhere you fall off, you're going to get hurt. So don't fall off. Be really, really careful and don't fall off, but don't go any slower.
But I think
Michael, Dan, and Henry Stewart's put together, I think, a outline of the track and some photos of the Macau Grand Prix. I think we're going to share his screen right now. Have a look at those, and feel free to jump in and provide some of the commentary, because all 3 of you have been there many times, or Michael once, Henry and Dan many times, but I have not. So we're just going to flip by, and we go to Dan. So there's the racetrack. I think it's almost is it 6 miles around?
something like that.
4 miles.
4 miles,
4
yeah,
miles.
6 and change kilometers.
Yeah, it's about like Elkhart Lake, Wisconsin track. Yeah.
Right, like Road America, where CCS and Azra ran on the weekend. So, Dan, why don't you take us through a lap here at Macau, wherever you want to start?
Well, if you start I don't know, I can't really do it with my hand. Hotel Mandarin Oriental, which is at the very bottom.
Right.
So if you just go back to the first red area, that's the starting grid. but
That
or
starts
actually
straight.
the one right before it. But basically, you're wide open when you hit Mandarin, completely blind corner, really smooth, but completely pinned. Sixth gear. I mean, you're just as fast as you can go. And then as you turn into Lisboa, that's a pretty common place on lap one to run straight if you're fighting for position with a bunch of guys. I used to think that was like first gear, but then I saw a couple of BSB guys go by me on the inside, and I realized that's still a second gear corner. And you keep that one apex all the way up San Francisco Hill. That's a really bumpy hill, and the incline is actually pretty steep. It doesn't show on the track calendar, on the track map, but your bike is just bouncing from side to side, the handlebars, and you're just full throttle. And then that's where you start navigating some of the concrete walls. And, you know, a couple of the corners look the same going into them, and it's easy to catch yourself out for the first few laps until you remember, because, you know, one of them's obviously second gear, one's third gear, and you don't want to get those back, you know, backwards. And then you start heading up the mountain. Well, you already have started heading up the mountain. Then you go up over through the mountain, and that part of the circuit's, it's really hard to pass. I mean, there's almost no passing up there. It's pretty smooth. It's pretty under control. You end up rubbing your shoulders on both sides of the Armco. You come in and both sides of your leathers are all scuffed up from the corners, and then once you start going down the hill, that's where your bike's in the air. You're downshifting from, I think it's fourth to second, and then at police corner you hang a sharp right. You stay on it a little bit, and then you go right into this long left carousel, which is a forever left. It's a complete switchback, but you're in first gear or second gear depending on your gearing, leaned right over. It's really slippery there. And then the corner Michael's talking about, Melco there, that sharp right-hander, your bike is literally at a stop. I've tipped over there in practice, like not going more than 5 miles an hour. It's so hard to get your bike turned around depending on how it's set up for, you know, your steering damper and what have you. But you basically have to pull all the way out, twist around. And but then going down the hill from Melco, again, really bumpy. There's a huge bump that you can't avoid, and you're shifting as quickly as you can shift. In fact, you're short shifting, and then you're really going quick as you head into that first right-hander. And that's a great place to start a pass. And then you get down the back straightaway, and then the right-hander, and then you're back onto the front straightaway. So it's a fun circuit. It's got elevation, it's got fast corners, it's got slow corners. I mean, it's really an enjoyable place to ride. And I guess the thing, like when Michael was saying, you know, you just ride, when you hop on a bike, you can't really plug in what percentage you're going to risk. But like when I rode at the TT or like some of the small road races, like the Northwest 200, guys crash and they don't come out of it, like over and over and over again. As soon as you know they went down, 80% chance that's it. So it gets, and because Michael was so successful in circuit racing, that would be the only attitude you could have. But because I really found more success in road racing, I think we just have a flip perception on it, because
Interesting.
most of my friends died. Most of Michael's friends got really injured. Like it's just, it's not a competition, but it's just, I think it automatically puts this self-preservation in your head, because the second you saw the helicopter or the red flag, you just, like my hair is standing up right now, because you know it was someone, you know everyone on the grid, you're just hoping it wasn't a close friend. And it's just a weird, you know, different thing than, you know, you can have like horrific accidents where you wish you were dead on circuits. But, you know, Macau's totally in the middle of those two. There's not a lot of people that die at Macau, but you can get, there's not a lot of people that crash and don't get hurt. like usually you get pretty hurt at Macau. I got super lucky. I just broke an ankle, but
Dan, you said earlier that the track, the event in terms of motorcycles racing there might be on borrowed time. Of course, no problem running touring cars or Formula 3 cars and put on the event. Has it come to the point now where with the speed of the motorcycles, even with the technology that we've got with, de-air suits and air fencing and all that, has this event outgrown the level of motorcycles that are racing these days? Should, after this year, it's scheduled for November, should this be the final Macau Grand Prix as far as a motorcycle race?
It comes down to the people running it, and the people running it now are tied in with the government. And the government, unlike the government on the Isle of Man, who accept the loss of life as part of their event, and they've grown, it's almost grown to be part of the whole aura of the TT. Is like, oh, 300 people died. Oh, how many died this year? But in Macau, they have a much different idea of motorsports. No one should die, and they don't expect anyone to die. And so I would say if one more guy passes away, that'll be it for sure. It is getting a little squeezed out. It's an invitation only race. They'll only take guys that have done either the TT or the Northwest at this point. They won't take anyone else. And you got to be aligned with a good team. They just reduced it last year to 28 riders from 32. And the reason for that was because of garage space. They're giving the cars more garage space. And I think there's always the threat that it's not going to come back next year. Like, they've been talking about it for quite a few years. I think it's probably going to keep chugging along as long as Macau does until something bad happens, and then that'll be that. It may not even go on this year. I mean, they're having outbreaks in Asia again for the virus. So, I mean, we don't even know. They say it is, but I mean, obviously it's a long ways away. They don't get much tourism for it. There's no real benefit to them. So the riders really don't get paid anymore. Like back when Michael was doing it, it was different. We get some sponsorship deals. I do it more for this charity thing and because I enjoy the ride. But the days of getting paid for Macau, same like the holidays, the days of going to Thailand, a couple of guys still go. But racing has gotten so year round because the money has dried up. So if you're a good rider, you're riding in 3 series. You're riding pretty much year round. You may go down to New Zealand to do a race just to make a bit of money. So a lot of guys are keeping their schedule more full, and they're also training a lot more. So I think a lot of the fun is gone. But that being said, the second year I went there in 2015, my German team, the Pens 13, it was the official BMW team that year. All the BMW technicians were there from Munich. It was a pretty big deal. I think Michael Rudder was my teammate that year. And literally my entire team got thrown in jail the first night they got there. And it was just like, obviously it was funny, but then it was kind of like, wasn't funny afterwards because of...
And that'll be a story for another edition of Track Announcer's Notebook. But yeah. Stuart, if we can go back to that photo, Michael and Henry and Dan have talked, the one there with Dan going around that right-hand corner, the one that you had up there for that one. Dan, just to give people that are watching in here tonight, so you're going around a right-hander there, and that is just a solid concrete wall off to your left, correct?
Yes. Every corner is blind.
Yeah. Unbelievable. Just no margin for error. Okay.
That one's up by the hospital, I might say. So that's that one.
Very convenient.
Yeah.
So Dan, this is you racing at Macau on a Kawasaki. There's your Pens 13 BMW S1000RR, and the photo on the right there, that is the Special Olympics kids that designed the graphics for the bike that you guys raced. I think that was what, 2 years ago?
So both of the bikes on the bottom The one on the left, number 17 there, that was this past year. And the kids designed the helmet and the leathers and the bike. And it's the intellectually disabled and autistic kids. The bike on the right, they also did the exact same thing. They didn't do the helmet. They did the leathers and the bike. And that was, the Special Olympics were tied into that one. And then what we did that year was, instead of having grid girls, which is very popular in Macau, we had 4 or 5 of the Special Olympic kids, athletes, come out and hold the umbrellas and stuff. And it was a real thrill for them too. And it's a great event. For about a week before, we do team breakout activities with them and breakout groups and hang out with them and stuff. It's a lot of fun.
Yeah, so it's a race for you, but there's a lot more going on off of the racetrack.
Yeah.
Speaking of off the racetrack, I want to take this opportunity to ask Henry how his daughter's doing.
She's actually right here watching this thing right now. Yeah.
Hi.
Yeah, she was there. You're right.
She was there. I remember. I had a crush on her.
Oh, no.
Oh,
Yeah, I was wondering whether you were going to say something.
Yeah, I got it. I think I got a CD if they had CDs back then, but she was going to be in the music business.
That's right. She did get into that a bit, but
Good stuff. Well, hello from me.
Henry, here are a couple of the top Americans that were part of the North American team that you took over. What was it in terms of a rider's style and attitude that you were looking at when you were putting the team together? In this case, Mark Miller and Jeremy Toy, who are both solid AMA Superbike guys.
yeah, and they both podiumed there too. Toy was the last one, but what we were mainly looking for was 2 things. You certainly had to be fast enough to get in the program, because if you couldn't, then we'd have wasted all that money getting them over there. And then equally, they had to be safe. So that we're looking at the 2, and through the years, I did pretty good on picking those. So those were the 2 main things. But Toy there was sensational. They even moved him up to a factory superbike the next year, and Miller was exceptionally fast and got on the podium, qualified 3rd and finished 3rd. So, we had guys like, Randy Renfro, he was the first American. He was my teammate. I didn't get near the podium, but he did. He got 3rd.
Great guy, Randy.
Yeah, you knew Randy. And so we had a lot of guys through the years, and I mean, I have the complete list of all of them through all the years, but this is a good chance to see Michael again. And actually, he doesn't look like he's aged that much at all. So Michael, keep it up.
It's the Canadian beer.
Yeah. I gotta thank him, because a couple of years back, Jeremy was supposed to race the Macau, and his bike never showed up, customs issues and all this kind of stuff. So I nabbed Ben Fox, and I nabbed another electronics guy. So I had like a stacked team in terms of like mechanics and stuff. And Jeremy didn't even stick around the day. He bolted immediately to like Thailand or something. So, but
yeah. Well, that was the thing, and Michael will remember this. We would say, take it easy. You want to go to Thailand. You get hurt here, you're not going to Thailand. So it was a thing to kind of calm everybody down, and it worked. It didn't quite work in Michael's case, but he luckily is fine now. But turning that around and winning that Canadian Superbike Championship the next year was amazing.
It was thank you very much, Henry. It was kind of with one arm too, because I don't know if you knew what the state of the injuries were, but Marquez just crashed this weekend, and he's in a different, I don't mean to compare him to me or anything, but he snapped his humerus, same as I did. And they're talking about some risk of the femoral nerve, which is a brachial plexus injury or something. And I'll tell you a funny story, but I was at a Christmas party about 5 years ago, and there was a head nurse from St. Michael's Hospital here in Toronto. And I told her what happened, and she said, "We don't do those operations anymore." I said, "Really?" She goes, "No, there's like a 10% success rate when they repair the brachial nerve that surrounds the humerus when they do a transplant." And I had a nerve transplant. So that year afterwards, 94, when I won, I only had the muscles. I had no nerve control or anything like that. But the nerve came back. So I was one of the lucky 10% that have it heal. So my thoughts are with Marquez, not that he's a friend of mine or anything, but I'm really impressed with his abilities. And I sure hope that they're able to repair his arm properly, because he's the most spectacular guy we've ever seen on a motorcycle, really.
Stuart Odell, I just want to go back to that last shot of Michael Rudder, because I know Dan has been a teammate and raced at a number of events with him.
That's a cool
I think
picture.
he's won the Macau Grand Prix, Dan, 7 times? And he won it last year in that shortened race after the big crash that you were involved in.
Yeah. He, I mean, last year, to be honest, Peter Hickman really won it. It was a mess. They ran one lap. Like, it broke every rule in the book, like that it was classified as a race, but they had their own reasons for wanting to classify it as a race, and they couldn't run it on Sunday. So somehow they figured out it was Rudder. But I mean, you know, he's the guy. He's Mr. Macau. I mean, he goes out there on whatever he's on. Lately, he's been on a weapon. He's been on a MotoGP bike, basically, and that's just making it even more, you know, easier for him. But you know, Peter Hickman's a real talent too, and he can ride BSB top 5 and top 3 on the road. So that's a pretty unique combination for one guy. But yeah, Rudder's a great guy though, and I've learned a lot from Michael about how to attack the roads, you know, smartly. He's old like me, and we end up spending more time just talking about like stocks and like non-racing stuff and kids, because we're so much older than like the young guys.
Yeah. Well, I think we've got a couple of more minutes. I'm going to just do a blatant shout out here. If you want to know who's going to be replacing Pat Gonzalez in the announcer's tower at Daytona or whatever, today is my first grandchild's first birthday. And
Congratulations.
she's already got an affinity to motorsport. We're going to get her a Strider. But this is little Solomika, whose birthday is July 20th. So a shout
Happy
out
birthday,
to her.
Solo.
I'm sure I'm going to be dragging her to a racetrack sometime soon. But she's just an awesome little kid. And on that note, I want to go around the podium here and start with Dan Kruger. Dan, your final thoughts on 2020. Hopefully Macau takes place, but before Macau, what are you hoping to race and what events are still on your calendar?
So just a couple of tests, maybe 3 or 4 tests, a race in Germany in September, a road race, Daytona in October, and then Macau in November. And then there's an endurance race in Kuala Lumpur in December. So that's the plan. I'm sure it'll change, not by my doing, but yeah, I'm just training and watching MotoGP on TV, keep in touch with all my buddies. And yeah, it's my daughter's birthday next week, so she'll be 7. So happy birthday to Caitlin. Okay,
well, happy birthday to Caitlin. Michael Taylor, what does your next 2 or 3 months look like? Other than not riding with Pat Barnes.
No birthdays here. I'm going to be riding with my son. I got a YZF 250 that I never liked dirt bikes when I was road racing, but now I love it. Jude's got a CRF 250, and we go out to the Ganaraska a bunch. I'm heading out this Friday to go and visit my sister, Christiane Crevier, Taylor now, in Vancouver, and build her a deck for her swimming pool and see some of my family out there. And just watch. I go religiously with a big cup of tea for Colin Fraser, and we watch the Formula One races together. And I try to keep abreast of what's going on with the developments in the Canadian National Series. And and my son is wakeboarding with Ben Young's group. So small world. He didn't even know who they were, and they're on the same lake. So congrats to Ben Young for his championship last year, if he's watching or anybody he knows is. And yeah, I'm a spectator now, and a happy dad. I got a 17-year-old daughter and a 19-year-old son, and pretty busy with that.
Well, time moves on. Henry Degouw, it's been awesome having you on the show. And we've got Bill Petro, who I think is still on. That was that photo we sent you of you and Art Robbins at Daytona. We're going to get a nice print of that done up, and we're going to ship that to Florida for you to add it there to your office with some of the other trinkets and trophies from your racing career. Your final thoughts on Macau? That was so much a part of your racing season.
Well, I did it. I was doing Macau for 28 years, raced at 3, and I miss going over there, but the stress of it too was getting to me, and I don't miss that. So now I follow the GPs, and I was set to go to several this year, but as we know, that all changed. So we'll have to wait and see about that.
Well, hopefully you can get to Daytona in October, and if the border opens and I can get down there, we'll do our annual dinner at one of the restaurants there in Daytona Beach. Let's go to Stuart Nodell for final comments. And Stuart, next week's show, we're still putting it together. We hope to have, as we have tonight, have some other great, outstanding guests, and of course, update the whole Canadian road racing scene. We'll have a recap of the race at Calabogie this Saturday, as well as round 3 of the SOAR series out at Grand Bend. Stuart?
Yeah, thanks, Pat. And also don't forget to subscribe and watch the show. We have our own YouTube channel, so we usually get it up there within about 24 to 48 hours. I'll edit it and ready to go. So yeah, please follow us there. And definitely Monday nights at 8 to 9 p.m. Eastern.
Thanks, Stuart.
Yeah, thanks, Stuart. Thanks for putting it
Guys,
on.
thanks for participating. It's been a lot of fun listening to the stories, and I've heard a lot about Macau, and I've read about it in bike magazines from back in the 90s and so forth. But to hear you guys describe it's quite something.
Okay, so that'll wrap up this edition of Track Announcer's Notebook. Our thanks to my co-host, Stuart Nodell, and producer, and to our special guest tonight, Henry Degouw, along with Dan Kruger and Michael Taylor. Stay safe, and we'll see you back here next Monday night on Track Announcer's Notebook.